What is up, Steeler Nation? Buddy Berg back in this bitch. Excuse my language, but I am hyped for this video. It's been like 3 weeks, I think, since I downloaded a video, and it is time. There are plenty of topics to talk about, and we are going to dive right into them. First and foremost, tonight is the last preseason game. So what's that tell you? The start of the season is just a few days away. Starts on September 12th against the Bills, excuse me, at 1 p.m. So that's, we got 16 days till we start the regular season. I don't know about you guys, but I am getting pumped for it. Yeah, we all have our worries. Or little concerns about the offensive line. Actually, we might even have some more concerns in the secondary than we do with the offensive line. But I'll touch on that a little later. I have my format laid out in a certain way, and we're going to start with first topic. We're going to start with the Steelers' big trade. The Steelers went out and made a trade for Pro Bowler. Yes, Pro Bowler. He made the Pro Bowl in 2017. Inside linebacker Joe Schobert. Now, Schobert was drafted in, I believe, 2016 in the 4th round out of Wisconsin by the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, the stink-ass Cleveland Browns. But, he had a stellar career there for the first 4 years he was with them. He didn't have any less than 100 tackles for the four seasons he was with them. Obviously, when you do work like that, people are going to notice. And Jacksonville came calling last year and offered him pretty decent contract. Jacksonville signed him to a 5-year, $53.75 million contract. Now, on the surface, it looks like a mega deal, but really, less than half of it was guaranteed. 21.5 was guaranteed. So, that's important when it comes to us trying to move forward with him with his contract. Another thing the Steelers were able to do, they were able to get Jacksonville to cover half of the $7.5 million that Schobert was due for this season. I've heard little whispers, not a lot, but I've heard little whispers that the Steelers are interested in possibly redoing Schobert's contract. I wasn't sure. Oftentimes the Steelers will bring someone in, and it'll be just for a season, and then they'll be gone. But Steelers seem to have interest in keeping this Schobert-Bush duo together, and I think it's smart. I think it's smart. We haven't been able to play a lot of nickel because of our weakness at inside linebacker. So we'll be able to play a lot of nickel this year. Look for us to play a lot of nickel where both Bush and Schobert stay on the field. But yeah, that was one hell of an acquisition. The rumor is that Jacksonville reached out to them. I don't know. Maybe they did. They must have, if they were willing to pay for half of his salary this season. It's just so ironic because Spillane had such a bad couple preseason games. I didn't hear anything. I follow the mini camp pretty close, and I didn't hear anything negative. But his production in those first couple preseason games were just atrocious. He was just terrible in coverage. He's a great third linebacker for the inside, but he's not a starter. And but I'm glad at least for this year, for now, we've got that inside position ironed out. Let's move on to the next topic. T.J. Watt's contract, the big elephant in the room. I was starting to get a little worried there, to be honest with you. I couldn't understand why this was taking so long. You know, sometimes there'll be a little bit of poker going on, and I get that, but I was surprised this didn't happen a couple weeks ago, simply because now, even if you sign, let me back up a little bit. A couple days ago, several news outlets were reporting that this deal is going to get done shortly after tonight's preseason game against the Panthers. So, of course, that's great news. But a lot of people were wondering why we didn't do this weeks ago. You know, players need this practice. They need these OTAs. They need to be able to get their bodies ready for a collision. And you can work out all you want on your own with your trainer at home or wherever. But, you know, I was listening to Keith Butler the other day, and he was saying, you know, until you hit and get hit, you're not ready. You have to get in there and get hit and give some hits and get your body used to that collision. But they'll have to be careful with him and take it slow. But all in all, it is good news. They're reporting a 5-year deal around $30 million a year. So that's just something that I guess that's the cost of doing business. Obviously, that's going to really eat a chunk out of our salary cap moving forward. But what are you going to do? You can't let a player like that go. I'm sure there's some out there that think that, but in the real world, in reality, you have to get this deal done. Yeah, so look for that to happen. I'm thinking we may hear something over the weekend, and if we don't hear anything over the weekend, probably Monday, because they're gonna now that I'm hearing this, they're gonna want to get him. They have one final. I think they have one final padded practice next week. Don't quote me on that, but I think so. I know they have a practice, whether it's padded or not, I'm not 100% sure. But, you know, Joe Haden, I'm moving on to the next topic. Joe Haden addressed the media a week or two ago, and just saying that he was looking for a contract extension. But he made it abundantly clear, out of respect for TJ, that TJ's contract comes first. Which, I mean, that shouldn't surprise anyone coming from Joe. Joe's a stand-up guy. Drew Rosenhaus, who is Joe Haden's agent, reached out to the Steelers a week or two ago and informed them that if possible, Joe would like to finish his career with the Steelers. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I would like nothing more than Joe Haden to finish his career here. You can't say enough about Joe Haden. You just can't. I mean, on and off the field, he is a true professional. I mean, we'll see how he plays this year. But I thought he had a great season last year. And he said that, no, a lot of what he works on now that he's over 30, a lot of what he works on is speed. He works constantly on keeping his speed. And, it sounds obvious, but at the same time, I thought, you know what, that's really smart. That's really smart because, as we all know, anyone that's over 30, with me over 40, you're losing speed. So, I would love to see Joe finish his career here. I'm not sure if we're going to have enough days to get that done. I guess we do theoretically. It's 16 days from today, assuming that this TJ Watt deal doesn't drag out a little bit longer and we get that done right away, maybe they can sneak Joe's extension in before the start of the season, because I'm sure most of you know the Steelers do not negotiate contracts during the season. It's just something that they've always done. It doesn't matter who you are, even with Roethlisberger. They negotiate up until the first week, and if they don't get a deal done, then they just don't get a deal done. And I think it's just something that they thought was best, that they're not pressured. I think sometimes you can feel pressured in certain situations, but whatever. This model has worked, and I have no reason to question that. Moving on. This is an interesting one here. James Washington. First of all, does everyone believe that James Washington did indeed ask for a trade? I think he did. I think it's obvious that he said something. He may not have specifically put it that way. What he said, he addressed the media, I want to say, maybe 3 days ago, and he said that was a private conversation when he was asked a direct question about whether or not he had asked for a trade. He basically shut it down by saying that was a private conversation, but also went on to repeatedly state that he just wants to help the team win. And I know he's frustrated. If you have abilities and you want to help when you know you can help. And I'm thinking probably if that hadn't happened where Claypool had started over him, I can't remember how that ended up where Claypool wasn't the fourth and he was. I'm thinking maybe James may have been nicked up there, and that's why Claypool jumped him when he was drafted last year. I can't really remember offhand. But the bottom line is, I hate to see someone like James Washington, kind of stressed out and tensions between him and the Steelers. Because not only do I think James Washington is a really good football player, I think James Washington is a really good person. And, I would love to see them do right by him. Divvy up these snaps a little better, where he's not looking like he's constantly on the cleanup crew. I'm not sure how you guys feel about James Washington, but I think Washington, he is almost a little bit of all of them. Not so much Deontay. I think he has the downfield speed of Claypool. I think he has the toughness of Juju. I mean, maybe not quite, because I think he's a little bit smaller than Juju, but you guys get what I'm saying. He has a little bit of, I believe he has a little bit of Claypool and Juju in his game. And, hopefully they'll even these snaps out. And, hey, you never know what could happen here. They can end up signing James Washington to a long-term deal. I mean, Juju we may get priced out. Somebody may offer Juju a huge contract, and we may elect not to go that route. In fact, especially if Roethlisberger's not here. All this stuff going on with James Washington, it kind of made me wonder, did we make a mistake re-signing Juju? And I'll admit, I was all for re-signing Juju. I was all for it. I was for it just from the simple fact is I was a little bit concerned at the experience of that crew if Juju had left. Even though Juju's young, he's still the most experienced receiver on that team. And that worried me that losing him would put us behind the 8 ball when it came to experience. But it's definitely made me question whether or not that was a good move. I mean, granted, it gives you depth, but you essentially signed a $10 million depth piece. So I think a case could be made either way. Why don't you guys write in a comment and tell me what you think? Should we trade James Washington? Should we give him what he wants and trade him? And do you guys think we should have let Juju go last year? Put that in the comment section and let me know what you guys think, because I'm really interested to hear other people's opinion on these two questions. I'm going to touch a little bit on the Steelers' cuts so far, and then finish up the video. So far, the Steelers have released 10 guys. The league required. The league did a little different this year, where they did it a little more gradually. The Steelers were required, well, every team was required to cut 5 guys on the 17th of August. So obviously the Steelers went and did that. And then on the 24th, both Tuesdays, on the 24th, another 5. And then I think, by the 31st, they have to be down to 53. So I'll just run off this list real quick. Most of these names you're probably not going to know. But wide receiver Isaiah McCoy was released. Offensive tackle Brandon Walton was released. Punter kicker Sam Solomon was released. Defensive tackle Abdullah Anderson. Defensive back Steven Denmark. Linebacker Kelvin Bundage. Offensive lineman Avante Collins. Running back Pete Guerrero. Wide receiver Taylor Simmons. Defensive back, now listen to this one. Defensive back Antoine Brooks. Now this is going to be the interesting part of this topic, because the rest of these guys are pretty much scrubs. But I don't know if all of you know, Antoine Brooks was slated to be our nickel slot corner. Essentially, we were going to use Brooks to replace Mike Hilton. The Steelers were going to ask Brooks to do what Hilton did. The Steelers love to play that kind of defense where they use their slot corner, their nickel corner to come up and help in the box to stop the run, especially with teams like Cleveland and Baltimore, any other team that runs the ball often. So there's a problem here. The reason that they released him is because he's been hurt. So they released him and designated him for IR. And as long as he had cleared waivers, he'd sit on IR on our practice squad. Well, he cleared waivers, I don't know, it was yesterday. I guess it was yesterday. And he now sits on IR. Now, I've looked, I researched and researched and researched. I can't figure out how long he has to sit on IR. Now, it used to be, I know if you had a devastating, if you ACL, something major, you were, IR for the whole season. But there's a limited IR as well, where it's, I think you can practice in 6 games to be back in 8. And then there's a pup list, but that's different. You have to start OTAs already on the pup list. And pup list is a little bit different. I don't think that money counts towards the salary cap, whereas the regular non-pup IRs do count towards salary cap. So here's the thing. So Arthur Millette is who they had decided was going to be Brooks's backup, right? In this situation where we're going to use Millette, since Brooks was hurt, in that slot corner position. Well, not only was Brooks hurt, now Millette is hurt. And the Steelers have a real problem here. Everyone's been worried about this offensive line, but we could come to find out that this secondary, oh God, I thought we were over with this from a few years ago. Pittsburgh, you're a Steeler fan, from a few years ago with Blake and some of these other bums. I was so sick of having a shitty secondary. It was nice the last few years to have a strong one. But anyway, I don't know what, I don't know how bad Millette's injury is. See, head coaches are not required to give injury updates during the preseason. So we don't know anything. Unless you're tied in deep with Steeler brass, you're not going to know anything. You're not going to know why someone's hurt. So, I think what they're going to end up having to do is they're going to have to put Cam Sutton back in the slot, and Pierre is probably going to end up being the outside, at least until Millette gets healthy again. And I can't, I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that Brooks is not done for the entire season. Now, I did read a little article where someone said that, and I don't know how many games he has to serve, because they didn't mention that, but they said he'd have to be waived and re-signed. And that makes sense, but there's got to be an amount of games that he has to serve for being on IR. And Wikipedia said 3 games, so I can't get a straight answer. Someone leave it in the comments and let me know. Sometimes I need some help with this stuff too. So anyway, yeah, it's looking like right now I think it's going to be Pierre on the outside, Cam Sutton on the inside. At the slot, the problem is, and I don't know if everyone's aware of this, Cam Sutton is good in coverage, but he could not do what Mike Hilton did. He could not rush the quarterback on blitzes. He's not physical. He doesn't play well in the box against the run. So oftentimes what the Steelers would do is they would rotate Hilton and Sutton at that spot. I mean, most of you know that, but the reason they were doing that is, and when they would do it is, if it was a high passing team, Sutton would get a lot of the snaps in the slot, and if it was a running team, like I stated before with the Browns and Ravens, Hilton would be utilized more often. Well, they're not going to have that. You're going to, luckily, on this new signing, with Schobert, we'll be able to be in a nickel, and both he and Bush will be on the field at the same time, and that would require one less DB, which a lot of times they played a lot of dime last year. One inside linebacker, I think 4 DBs. So that's another regard where, another situation where Schobert, that signing with Schobert helps us out a lot. So, that's it, guys. I covered the 4 topics. Oh, one more thing. I said the 31st they got to go down to 53, and 16 players get designated for the practice squad. With that being said, check out the game tonight. It's probably starting here very soon against the Panthers. And I don't know, we'll see a bunch of backups play, but you're a true football fan, you watch it no matter what. You guys enjoy your night. Watch the game. Hit that like button and subscribe. Buddy Berg out.